Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AKA Hotel Residences Corman Communities, Ariel Property Advisors, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Mortgage Lending, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Casamatides Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Ocean First Bank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, Stonehenge NYC, SVN CPEX Real Estate Services, Tierra CRG, the Meringer Family Foundation, and these friends. New Jersey born and bred James Simmons, Catholic school, Princeton University, Virginia Tech, Kellogg School, has done a number of deals in his life. And we're very fortunate to have my friend Jim Simmons today. Hi, Jim. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to see you.
Jim, tell me about your grandparents. Go back on your father's side and then your mother's side.
My father was actually born in Rutherford, Alabama, and my grandmother migrated from Alabama to first Chicago in search of work, and left my dad with his grandparents while she did so. She came back and settled in Columbus, Georgia when my dad was in high school. So he finished high school in Columbus and then went into the Navy.
Let's talk about your mother's side.
Yeah, so my mother, she's from a place which is known as paradise for a lot of people, which is Key West, Florida. And when I tell people I have my roots there, they have a hard time believing it. But my lineage on that side of the family originated out of the Bahamas. And they too were a part of the original slave trade. Came over to Key West in search of work. My grandfather, amongst many things, helped build a railroad, which was an overseas railroad that Henry Flagler built all the way down to the Keys. And so we have a multi-generational history in Key West, Florida. And my mother left and emigrated, or not emigrated, left and went to college north in North Carolina after high school.
So your father, after he graduated high school, joined the Navy, correct?
Yes, and he did so because he didn't have many other options. He would have loved to go on to college, but due to finances and the inability to really find a way to pay for it or how to apply, he did what a lot of young men did to get out of the circumstances they were in, which is to join the armed services. So he joined the Navy.
Now, how'd your mom meet your dad?
My dad was stationed in Key West. If you go back to that point in time, Key West had a huge naval presence. Remembering that Cuba was one of our arch enemies. And so he was stationed there. His best friend at the time met my mother's sister, her older sister. They ended up getting married eventually, but through that original introduction, my parents met while she was in high school, actually.
So then your father was stationed in Philadelphia, correct?
Yes, he was stationed a number of places, but when I was born, he was stationed in Philadelphia, and I was born in a naval hospital in Philadelphia, lived in South Jersey for the first few years of my life prior to my dad exiting the Navy and moving to Central Jersey with my mom.
Let's talk about the interesting story about the family in the one bedroom, and you had enough family members to have a baseball team.
Yeah, you know, Michael, you know me, and I'm not one of those people who regales about walking uphill both ways to and from school. But what I can tell you is that when my parents moved to Central Jersey, my aunt, who I just mentioned, who married my dad's best friend, she became widowed. So he died when he was in the service. And so she had a young son who was a year older than me. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. My mother had my sister and one of my oldest cousins. So my mother's oldest sister's daughter, who's really close to my mother in age because she's one of 6. She moved in with us with her daughter. So we had 8 people in a 2-bedroom apartment in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Now, as a child, it was fun because you always had people to play with. But thinking about those circumstances now that I'm an adult, they were probably pretty challenging for my parents at the time.
When your father completed the Navy, he got a job with RCA, correct?
He did. Back then, RCA of the world, the GEs, the technical companies, the IBMs, they had their own training programs, and some had their own campuses where they brought people in and taught them a lot about technology, and that's what my dad did. He got into one of the technical programs at RCA at the time.
And he also went to get some technical programs at Rutgers, I read.
That is correct. That's correct. Because we were living in New Brunswick, Rutgers is based there. And so he took some college level classes there as well.
Let's talk about the move to Somerset. Your father was able to.
Yeah. So you know, my grandparents on both sides ultimately owned their houses, and it was instilled upon us that home ownership was really important. And so my parents saved for the better part of the time that my father got out of the Navy. And shortly after my sister was born, probably 2 years after my sister was born, when I was 6, they acquired a house in Somerset, New Jersey, which is a suburb of New Brunswick. One of the interesting points of fact is that redlining was in full force and effect. And that was the only place that they were allowed to buy. There was only one lender that would lend to them. So they were really limited by sort of the neighborhoods in which we could live and grow up.
You know, few people would realize that this was the Levitt homes were in the neighborhood, and the Levitt homes were redlined, correct? Similar.
That's correct. A couple of blocks from where I grew up, Levitt had a large development, and for a significant period of time of my youth, it was 100% white, if not 99% white, and there were strict rules about where you could travel in terms of riding your bike and playing when you were a young kid. Again, you didn't understand why, but that is a fact.
Okay, you said your parents, you know, were always interested in education, and they sent you to parochial school, correct?
That's correct. St. Peter's High School in New Brunswick, which doesn't exist any longer, unfortunately.
So let's talk about those days over there at St. Peter's.
Yeah, St. Peter's. I have very, very fond memories of my time at St. Peter's. I was fortunate. I mean, small school. I graduated with probably 120 kids. Many of which I was there for since first grade. If you were a dedicated student and were interested in learning, they provide you the tools to do so. It allowed me to get accepted to several top universities, and we were also good in sports as well. So it was a well-rounded 12 years of education that also provided some spiritual grounding and guidance as well.
Now, when you were there, you had an interesting things that you used to do in the summer. Talk about Stevens Tech in Hoboken.
Yeah, Michael, for a lot of kids, who don't have family members or friends or mentors who can help to guide them and educate them about the possibilities relative to careers choices. Summer programs exist to help that process along. And I'm the direct beneficiary of one said program, which was called the STEP program, the Stevens Technical Enrichment Program. And I was a part of that program from the time that I was a freshman in high school until the time that I graduated. And the syllabus included Saturdays, every Saturday during the school year, as well as 8 weeks during the summer. And those 8 weeks during the summer you spent on Stevens campus just as if you were a full-fledged student. You took classes from professors. They were all engineering focused, but they led you to understand that you could be a college student and perform well at a high level. And it put me in a situation where I was around like-minded kids. So that was certainly one of the foundations and building blocks that led me to actually be a double E and CS major at Princeton.
Now, as you were saying to me, this program was also available to you because it was a minority program, correct? It was for minorities?
That's correct. It was for talented minorities in the greater New York region. We had kids from New York City, from northern New Jersey, central New Jersey. I think there might have been a couple from Staten Island, Long Island, but they drew from a pretty large catchment area.
Now, one reason, you're in the real estate business today. How did you decide to get involved with engineering?
Well, part of it, I think, Michael, was influenced by my father, who worked at General Electric for many years, and its successors, including the Honeywell Corporation. But when he came out of that RCA course, he became a field engineer, and his job was really to troubleshoot large mainframe computers. So he would take me to the offices of his clients on the weekends when he would go and get called in. And I was interested in what he did. And back then you had, card readers. So you fed the little cards into the computers, and that fascinated me. But secondarily, I had deep interest, and I still do, in science and in math, and excelled at both. And that really pointed me towards engineering because I really liked the way that it made me think.
Now, when we were talking yesterday, you were saying to me that you probably would have ended up at Rutgers, but your mother felt that you had, you were the class president, you were a member of the National Honor Society, you were a reasonable athlete, as you would say, okay?
Jack of all trades, master of none. I'll definitely say that to be the case.
Okay, so you could have gone to Rutgers, but mom said you have the ability and you should go and excel. So how did you decide to apply to half the top universities in the nation,
Yeah, I'll
including
tell you.
Stanford? But that was
I'll tell you, Michael. This is no disparagement to Rutgers. I was a true Scarlet Red fan. I actually was present at the very last Princeton Rutgers football game. We would go, and a bunch of my buddies, we would go to Rutgers football and basketball games whenever they were playing at home. At the time, the state of New Jersey had a program where if you were one of the top students academically, that you got admitted to Rutgers in your junior year. And so I did. And from my perspective at the time, I was done. So I was going to go to Rutgers, and my life's going to be great. I was going to continue to hang out with my friends that I had been with for 12 years. And my mother said, you should not limit your opportunities. This comes around once in your life. You can apply to a number of different places and at least see where you get into, and then choose. Go visit and see what you like. And you're only a junior. And I was actually a year young for my class. So she said, "Listen, you're relatively young, so why don't you apply? And by the way, you've done very well. So there are other schools that you should consider." So I applied to a number of the Ivies and some other technical schools and got into a bunch of them. So in April is the period of time when schools roll out the red carpet and they have the newly admitted freshman class or prospective freshman class come and visit. And so it took a bunch of those visits, and Princeton just struck a chord. And I can tell you that if you'd asked me at the beginning of the process, was I going to not go to Rutgers, but just go 15 minutes down the road and go to Princeton? The year before that, I would have said, absolutely not. That makes no sense. If I'm not going to go to Rutgers, I'm going to go someplace far. But when I visited Princeton, it instantly clicked. My roommate, who was my roommate for 4 years, was someone who I met during the STEP program. We took a couple of college visits, not together, but we got admitted to a few of the same schools, so we were there at the same time. And during a conversation that a lot of kids have, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? What are you thinking? What do you like? We both sort of said that we felt really good about Princeton. And so we decided collectively to go. We became roommates and have been long-standing friends ever since then. But that's part of how that happened.
So let's talk about, 1 year that you weren't at Stevens anymore. It was the year between Princeton and between the first and second year, where you learned how difficult it was to become a banquet waiter, and you realized that you wanted to use your smarts as opposed to your brawn to work.
Yeah, Michael, I can tell you that I tell my kids almost on a daily basis, since they're tired of hearing it, that I don't work for a living. I am fortunate enough that I can sit and use my brain as opposed to, as you just defined it, use my brawn. The job that I had between freshman year and senior year in high school was as banquet waiter at a newly developed Marriott in Somerset, New Jersey. I worked that job with my cousin, and we were young for the job. So these were adults and then 2 high school kids. And we would sometimes have to work double shifts, 18 hours, carrying up to 12 plates on a tray at attention. If you had a wedding, you might get out of there at 3 or 4 a.m. and you had to break down everything post. So it was really eye-opening to me, and made me appreciate what it means to get an education and how it can transform your life. I had some other jobs during high school um, where I was cleaning buildings and warehouses with a couple of my friends, but the, the, the level of physical exhaustion I have not experienced since I had that job. And it, as I said, truly makes me appreciate what the people who actually make this world go around do on a daily basis to make um, our lives that much easier. The people who fix the roads, the people who deliver the mail, those, the people who work in factories, those are people who really work hard on a daily basis.
Let's talk about the summers between the other years. Now that you no longer be the banquet waiter, you went to Bell Labs.
I did, I did. So again, following that whole path on being an engineer, there were a few places that were well renowned for having really smart people and doing some really interesting things. Bell Labs was one of them, one of their subsidiaries, Bellcore. I ended up getting an internship there between freshman and sophomore years. And then the remaining 3 years, I had an internship at General Electric, and in two locations. One was in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and the other was in Washington, D.C. Again, doing some really interesting work, both with satellites, where the satellite division was in Valley Forge, and in Washington, D.C., in our defense-oriented, and their defense-oriented subsidiaries there. So really opening my eyes of what was at the forefront at that point in time of technological advancement in the late 80s, mid to late 80s.
So then it's June of 1988. You're graduating Princeton. How did you decide to go to GE?
Well, it was easy um, in the sense that my parents almost dictated it. Right? It was one of the top corporations, well respected in the world, and I got accepted into their Edison engineering program, training program. And that program, if anyone knows anything about General Electric, they are world renowned for their management training programs. And they have, at the time that I was there, they had many. They had some that were focused on engineering, some that were focused on finance, some that were focused on manufacturing. But the oldest and the first was the Edison engineering program. And so I got accepted to that. And at the same time, I got a master's in engineering from Virginia Tech. But I spent my first 4 years at GE rotating around through different businesses in preparation for being in management. And that's the way that GE prepared its future managers.
Now, didn't you have a opportunity for this small little company in Redmond?
Yeah, Washington. What I can say is, despite my having the offer from General Electric, again, remembering that I worked there the prior 2 summers, and following the advice of my mother, which is you should have as many options as you can, I interviewed my senior year, and being an electrical engineering computer science major, and many firms recruiting at Princeton, I interviewed with a number of very large and small companies, IBM, Hewlett Packard being a couple, but there was one in particular that I liked, and I think they liked me, and I was going to fly out to have a follow-on interview, or one of the later stage of the final interviews. And I talked to my parents about it, and they said, well, listen, it's great that you have these options, but you have this great option here, and this company that we haven't heard of, you're going to fly to the other side of the country, and that's where you have to live. And are you really ready for that? So long story short, I ended up not going out for the interview, but that company ended up being Microsoft. Now, we have to put in context that Microsoft, what it is today, was not what it was in 1987, 1988. So it was a small company that was only known to people who were in technology space. Windows was very young. Um, the advent of the PC was really new. The first Mac had just come out. So again, this is very nascent technology, and that's one. When I do talk to some of the youth, when I do talks, occasionally I say if there's one decision that I made that I may have some trepidations about its whether how wise it was or not, it's Microsoft versus General Electric. And you can look at the stock prices today, if that's any indication of the fortunes of those two corporations.
So what we're going to do right now is take a break and continue with your life next week. And I'll see you back next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.